The atomic bomb was known as one of the most destructive forces in the entire world. For many years, people lived in fear of this deadly weapon. Its explosive power is roughly the equivalent of 15,000 tons of TNT. This would later be surpassed, though, by the hydrogen bomb, which could yield a result of roughly 100 million tons of TNT worth of explosion, which could basically create Skyblock survival all by itself. But the hydrogen bomb is far from the scariest weapon around because it only contains about 1/10 of the explosive power that results from Black Swan's midriff. Now that Black Swan is released, another piece of Exodia has been added to the Tall Hot Women team. And today I'm going to be going over how to build and play one of the most complex characters in Honkai Star Rail. If you enjoy these types of videos, let YouTube know it doesn't suck by liking, and also feel free to subscribe as well. With all that being said, my name is Braxophone, and let's talk about Black Swan. Well, Kid Moon Girl is hard and easy to understand at the same time. It's hard to understand her kit since it's the most convoluted thing in the entire game, but it's easy to understand why you ended up on all fours. Because her kit is longer than a Yu-Gi-Oh card in 2024, I'm just gonna leave this here so that you can pay attention. Black Swan's basically a damage over time nuke, meaning that she has damage over time that makes an enemy explode on their turn, which is relatable because when I see Black Swan, I also explode. Her dot is called Arcana, and it stacks with itself to deal more damage up to 50 stacks. Think of it like STDs. It can't be removed or cleansed even when the boss phase changes, and it ignores resistance to debuffs while counting as a wind shear dot. Your goal is to give every enemy on the other side STDs, or stackable talent damage. Her talent goes into even more detail, so I'll just go ahead and leave this here too. Every time an enemy takes damage over time, they have a base chance to get Arcana, and when you have 3 or more Arcana stacks and it triggers, it'll hit adjacent enemies as well. If you get up to 7 stacks, it ignores 20% of defense, which is canon by the way, because I would also let Black Swan infiltrate my defenses on cooldown. With one of her traces, she allows friendly units that trigger a dot to add more Arcana stacks up to 3 times per attack. And what's awesome is things like Kafka skill and Sambo E4 don't reset the Arcana stacks on an enemy, so you're able to trigger dots and dish out a ton of damage with those characters without resetting anything. Another trace that she has gives her partial effect hit rate to damage conversion, which basically just means that she doesn't have to have split scaling issues and she can hit massive damage. And the only thing funnier than massive exploding wind damage is whatever this is. So now that you sort of know how Arcana works, I can actually start talking about the character. Her basic attack is actually the most complex basic attack in the game, so let's just... Her basic attack can apply 1 Arcana to enemies and has an extra base chance to add 1 more stack of Arcana for every dot type on the enemy, so up to 4 extra stacks. All of these base chances activate on their own, they're all independent of each other. But with that said, unless you're in Simulated Universe, you're probably not going to have every single type of damage over time up all the time. And also, if an enemy has Arcana on them, that counts as wind shear, so you're also getting that chance for the extra stack every single time. You'll end up using her basic attack probably more often than not. Her skill is probably what you'll end up starting off with though, since it's a blast wind damage with 100% base chance to add Arcana and also lower enemy defense. Her skill trace gives her the same effect as her basic attack, where you have a chance to gain bonus Arcana stacks for every single different dot type on an enemy. So basically, you want to stack up a bunch of Arcana using other dots and Black Swan's kit just to make it blow up for massive wind damage. That's the entire thing behind her kit. Her ultimate also helps a fair bit as well because it gives enemies a vulnerability for 2 of their turns and makes Arcana stacks count as every type of dot. So when you use her basic attack or skill, you have a chance to apply an extra Arcana for every kind of dot no matter what. Once per ultimate, Arcana also won't reset to 1 stack after it blows up. Oh, and also it does AoE wind damage. I kind of forgot because I was too hyperfixated on her massive personality. Lastly, your technique applies Arcana stacks and keeps applying an Arcana stack until it fails to add one, with each chance getting a little bit lower. Usually this means about 3 Arcana stacks from her technique with a complete build, but like my financial state, it's pretty random. Ultimately, the only thing harder than Black Swan is the people who play her, but once you get her down, she's an incredibly powerful character. For talent priority, I'd recommend going for her talent and her skill first, but her ultimate and basic attack are also going to want to be leveled in the end, so you're going to get them all up, just like... With Black Swan revolving around fate and cards, you'd expect her kit to have some RNG, but it's basically a non-issue if you build her right. The only problem is, your relics f***ing suck. The best in slot relic set for Black Swan is the prisoner set used for most dot characters, since it gives an attack buff as well as defense ignore. In a worst case scenario, you can combine 2-piece wind damage bonus, attack percent, and speed sets, but 4-piece prisoner is undeniably the best set. As for planar sets, Pangalactic is best due to its effect hit rate bonus and attack scaling based on effect hit, but Glamoth and Space Healing Station are actually pretty okay. For main stats, you'll want an effect hit or attack percent body, speed or attack boots, wind damage or attack orb, and an attack rope to maximize her damage. Wait, give me a second. Ideally, you'll be able to get to at least 120% effect hit rate to get some solid damage bonus and land more Arcana stacks, and if you can somehow get there without an effect hit rate body, then attack percent body is better. And as for speed, because she wants to hit enemies between their turns where her dot will trigger and reset stacks, usually you want to make Black Swan as fast as possible. For endgame content, a lot of enemies have been calced at 158 speed, and accounting for a break, that would be roughly -4 for them, so that would put them at effectively 154 speed in the turn order. So if you make Black Swan 155 speed, you'll be speed tuned to the enemy to max out Arcana stacks until you break them for the first time. If you play with other speed buffs, her total speed can actually be lower. Like if you play Ruan Mei with a max talent, you can actually run her at 145. Well, if you want to get even more technical, you can run her at like 135 with Ruan Mei because she has the break delay, but basically what I'm saying is faster is better, but if it's too fast, too furious for you, you can go a little bit lower. We're gonna need this again. The average player probably won't be able to reach those stats without a ton of time and investment though, and she's still pretty solid even if you can't reach that amount, so don't feel bad about it. Unless you won your last 50-50, then I hope you feel really, really bad. That's when you'd want to run attack boots instead though. So the TLDR is you either get to at least 155 speed or higher for Memory of Chaos. That way you can fit in extra Arcana stacks between boss attacks and maximize her damage. It's about 15% more damage than if you went something like 134 speed. Or if you treat speed as an actually useless stat and you go for attack percent boots and just play her super slow, it ends up being the second best thing to getting 155 speed, unless you literally just don't break enemies ever. It's super freaking weird, but it's either greater than 155 speed or no speed at all. Or, you know, if you play buffs, then you could adjust that. If you can't get to 155 speed or higher with or without buffs, go with attack percent boots. Here's the general build summarized. Keep in mind that different content can yield different results, so this is just the best general build we calculated in consideration of accessibility. For substats, if you're aiming for a minimum of 120 effect hit, then the rest will all want to go into speed if you're going for a fast one, and if you're not going for fast Black Swan, if you're going attack boots, then ignore speed completely, go for attack percent and effect res. When you reach Ishgard and unlock the Astrologian job, all you'll need is a shiny new weapon. Light cones are basically cards, and Black Swan can use a lot of them. And for once, you don't just lose for not being in patch 1.1 when they gave out that free Silver Wolf light cone. Congrats. This truly is a win for PS5 players. Of course, her best in slot is her signature, and like my Overwatch teammates with paint chips, I would put that in my mouth. It gives effect hit rate, attack percent, and defense ignore, so it's really strong overall. But as you're playing the Memo Keeper of the Garden of Recollection, maybe you should recollect how much money you have in your bank account before you pull for this goddamn light cone. Incessant Rain is pretty solid on her for its bonuses. The brand new free-to-play craftable light cone, its showtime at S5, basically trumps all the other 5-star light cones that weren't already listed. Good Night and Sleep Well also does that at S5, but it's not as free-to-play friendly. Rat Light Cone is also great at S5 because the effect hit it gives makes Black Swan a lot easier to build, and also opens up some flexibility to attack percent body as well if you already have good effect hit substats. In the Name of the World is also great at S1. S5 Tutorial actually works to give her energy due to her defense debuff on her skill, though it's not super necessary to build her for ult up time in comparison to other characters. Solitary Healing is also good at S5, but there's better 4-stars for her, so I wouldn't really opt for it here. And lastly, if you have a high superimpose for Mata, that's fine too, but like I said, the new craftable is just going to be better for her. Here's her light cones ranked on a sheet, and just once again, keep in mind that it all depends on the number of enemies, type of content, etc., but this is a good general reference. It's about 3 a.m. in the goddamn morning, and I've downed a liter of coffee, so let's do this. Black Swan is a dot character, and she wants to play with other dot units. That's it. That's the whole thing. Congratulations. Team guide done. Here are some dot units. You can use all of them. I wouldn't recommend this one on the far right because he sucks. Not power level wise, I just hate him. But his E4 is actually really good for this because he can re-trigger his dots. When skill hits an enemy with 5 or more stacks of wind shear, the enemy immediately takes 8% of current wind shear damage. That counts as proccing a dot. That's really cool. It's really good. In a way, at E4, he kind of works like Kafka, and that's a pretty solid pairing with him and Black Swan. The only downside is that he's wind and Black Swan is also wind, so you're kind of doubling up on wind dots, which is a little weird, but it's okay. It's not Jover yet. Gwenifin is so damn perfect in every single possible way. I love Gwenifin. She's fantastic. You guys should play Gwenifin. Level Gwenifin. Stand Gwenifin. Amongst all the creator drama, Gwenifin is the only person that's not talking about it, and that's a massive fucking W. Serval also dots, but she's erudition. Why does she dot? I don't fucking know. Other characters that dot are characters like Luca. Luca is really good. He can reproc his dot. It's really nice. It's really cool. Oh, and Asta can also apply dots, but the reason I put Asta here actually isn't because she applies dots. It's because she applies attack to your whole team. Wow, very cool. Huoho and Ruanmei are two of the better supports for Black Swan. Huoho is a healer, but she can add attack to your entire team and some energy, and Ruanmei also gives damage bonus to your entire team, and also penetration, which is really nice for when Black Swan wants to throw on the strap on. Since Black Swan's going to be played in teams with multiple dot units, having characters that buff your entire team is going to be more beneficial than a character that just buffs Black Swan. And lastly, and the most important character is Kafka. Baby girl. Kafka enables every single dot team in this entire goddamn game. In the entire Star Rail verse, she is literally the most important character for dot teams, and Black Swan's debatably like one of the most important characters for dot teams because she does really big dot damage, and Kafka can just proc all of the dots and that make you do more damage, and more damage is really good because more damage means you kill things faster, which is awesome. It's the entire goal of the game. Now, can you play Black Swan without Kafka? This is actually a really important question that I want to answer as quickly and as succinctly as possible because team sections usually take about 15 fucking minutes because I don't really know why. I just talk way too goddamn much. Black Swan is a strong enough dot character to be played with other dot characters and still make a decent time on like the hardest content in the game. And you can just play her with 2 other dot characters and a healer, or you can play with another dot character and Ruanmei or something like that. But Kafka massively increases dot team's damage, and just due to the fact that she can reproc dots like so consistently, makes her definitely one of Black Swan's best pairings, and I would highly recommend playing Kafka with Black Swan if you have her. If you don't, you can still play Black Swan, but ultimately the Black Swan-OC wants the Kafka-OC. If you're watching this section, then you're an incredibly based white-haired woman enjoyer. But before that, you need to KYS. Keep your wallet safe. Eidolon 1 is her best value per dollar. Not that Eidolons are worth anything in real life. Please don't spend money. Basically, every dot type on an enemy shreds their resistances to that type of damage. So if an enemy has a lightning dot, they have their lightning resistance reduced by 25%, which is basically a Ruanmei ult at talent 10, but with full uptime. The benefit of this is that the dots are obviously going to do more damage, but I'm sure there's going to be some crazy comps that you can use where you treat her as Ruanmei instead of playing Ruanmei, and then you can just have 2 of them. It'll be fantastic. The amount of damage this adds is pretty crazy, and if you're a slut for thigh boots, it's a good pickup. Her E2 has a base chance to give adjacent targets 6 stacks of Arcana after an enemy with Arcana is defeated. The real STDs were the enemies we blew up along the way. E3 is going to be skill and talent level up, and E4 is going to make it so that when you apply your ultimate debuff, enemies have their effect res lowered, and Black Swan will get 8 energy back at the start of that enemy's turn, or when an enemy with it is defeated. It does only happen once per ult per enemy though, so it's decent but not as good as it could be. E5 is an ultimate and basic attack level up, and E6 basically allows Black Swan to be played well outside of dot teams, while massively enhancing her in dot teams as well. Whenever enemies get attacked by an ally, they now have a base chance to inflict an Arcana stack and an additional smaller chance to make it 2 stacks instead of 1. With a high effect hit Black Swan, you can effectively see 4 to 6 more Arcana stacks per team rotation, and potentially a lot more if your Black Swan is slow. Overall, this character is very much either leave her at E0, get E1, or get E6. As far as E1 or her light cone goes, E1 is just going to be generally better, since it's essentially a whole team buff rather than just a Black Swan one. That's just my opinion, but I do feel like it holds pretty true. But honestly, why even spend on this game when you could just play a 4-star and hit a trillion damage, baby? 99% of gamblers quit right before they win, baby.